passion for wildlife places and agencies for Scotland for clients in the travel and lifestyle and leisure sectors. This led to a series of commissions for British Airways to produce their corporate calendar for a period of 4 years. During this, he travelled to over 50 countries, photographing landscapes in some of the world's remotest habitats. That included tropical rainforest, deserts, mountain, polar and savanna. Inevitably, he had a few scrapes, flying from Cumin to Perth in Australia with a fractured skull. Wow. Having survived a collision with a tree in a Chinese taxi, we need to hear more about that, Colin. Having survived a collision with a tree and spending 4 weeks in Pakistan's Karakoram Mountains with a herniated disc, neither of which he says he would like to repeat. Colin's work has been published in 9 books and most recently by Merrill Fragile, Birds, Eggs and Habitats 2020, followed by the Karakoram, the Ice Mountains of Pakistan in 2021, the most glaciated region on the planet outside Antarctica and the Arctic. Colin's awards include the National Adventure Awards Business Category winner 2015 and the Scottish Award for Excellence in Mountain Culture 2020. He has been the subject of 3 BBC documentaries entitled Mountain Man, which focused on his work in Scotland and Pakistan. So if you'd like to put your hands together to welcome Colin Prior.
Here now. You're in for it. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here, and as you are probably aware, I'm standing in for Doug. I'm hopeful that I can fill his shoes. He was a tremendously talented videographer, filmmaker, and was one of the pioneers, particularly under the water, with what he managed to achieve. Our careers were a little divergent because he followed moving images, whereas I've always retained a passion for still photography. And I think you know, his choice was probably a better one, because what we're seeing already is still photography being eclipsed by videography in a big way. The brands out there are only really interested in moving images for social media and for the websites, and still photography can be taken from 4, 6, 8K video very, very easily. And so little, unfortunately, has been printed, not just photographic prints, but also in commercial printing and lithographic printing. The publishers out there have been very, very careful about what they're publishing because of the demise of bookshops. And still photography, if somebody asks me where it's going to be in 5 years' time, these lenses create it wide open. And that's what we're up against as photographers. So the only thing is that photography remains a conduit for personal expression. And I don't think that part will change. I don't think that AI can really change that. I mean, AI is going to change a huge amount of still photography in terms of businesses' ability to source images without a photographer being involved, without having to spend any money. And the currency of photography is unfortunately worthless. It's a bit like music. It's taken 20 years to get to the same place as music has got to. So it will be interesting to see where that goes. But where photography remains relevant is because you can use it as a conduit to express the way you feel about a particular subject, a particular topic. If you're passionate about something, you can build a portfolio and then hopefully have it published. So I'm going to talk about the book that I'm working on currently. I've been on it for about 8 or 9 years, but it's still work in progress, and it's going to be called between mountain and sea. This isn't a designed book that you're looking at. What I'm going to share with you are double page spreads and my thinking behind the way that this book has evolved, because it's kind of evolved since I started shooting it. So that might not, that probably won't be the front cover, and the graphics might change. So the last book, well, that was the second last book I did, called Fragile, where I brought together birds' eggs that I photographed in the Museum of Scotland over a period of 7 weeks. And they're quite exquisite. They hold the third biggest collection of eggs in the world. And I was given access to them. And what I did was I reconnected them with their habitats. They're not exactly the place that egg was taken initially or originally, but they're bona fide habitats where I know that species exists. So it took me quite a long time to put both the egg and the habitat together, and the criteria I used was really the dominant colour of the egg to try and get some synergy between the egg and the habitat. Incidentally, as you can probably read there, that's the Arctic tern. They're really beautiful eggs, the shape of them. This is the egg of a golden eagle, and these collectors that took these eggs, they were fanatical, and they've got meticulous data about where they took these eggs and the conditions and so forth. And the data for the museum is actually worth more to the museum than the actual eggshells are, and that's why they're valuable. So that's in Glen Shield, very much golden eagle habitat there. They'll feed on mountain hares predominantly, some ptarmigan. And swift. Beautiful, beautiful egg. Just a small white egg like that, and swift populations have collapsed internationally. And it's the demise of insects. I mean, I don't know if you remember, when I was younger and heading up the islands, I had a GTI, and I used to drive it, the engine was white hot when I got home. And the front of it during July and August was caked with midges. And not that I drive like that anymore, but you don't get that insect kill on the car, and that is traffic and insect kill, butterflies, bees, moths, and other insects. I mean that must happen, all the time. You're probably not even aware of. But that lovely sky there, which is where swifts sleep on the wing. They're unbelievable creatures. That was the last book, which is now sadly in print, called The Karakoram, Ice Mountains of Pakistan, and I made 6-month-long trips to the Karakoram over a period of 23 years, and this was a quote I used: "There is an ecstasy that marks the summit of life, and beyond which life cannot rise." Jack London from The Call of the Wild. And I think that has passed me by that already. And the Karakoram was it. It was just incredible. And the mountains there are like no other mountains you've seen. They're so angular, they're weathered in such amazing ways. The rocks are granite and nice, which are really hard and weather resistant. Sorry about the sun there. It's not going the other way, okay. It just bleeds the colour out daylight. So that's the Triangle Towers. And I mean, it looks like something out of a Tolkien novel. It doesn't look real, it looks like a CGI image that. But it's quite incredible. That's a Characusa glacier there. And you can just see, I mean, even that peak here, which must be about probably 150 feet. I mean, it's so hard, the rock. I mean, the sandstone it would have disintegrated over a long period of time. And these twin peaks are at the top of the Biafra Glacier, and they're not named. They don't have a name. I mean, can you imagine if they were the Lake District? You know, there'd be thousands of people a day around them photographing. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So, between Mountain Sea, the Great Coat, which is going to be at the beginning of the book, the hardest thing of all to see is what's really there. And that is what people miss when they're outdoors. They don't look hard enough. I mean, people love to say to me, how did you find that? And all I say is a look. What they don't realise is I'm looking harder than they are. And it's knowing where to look as well. It's knowing where to look. So, I mean, that's a tremendous book, The Peregrine. He just writes these short essays, and his observation and command of English is sensational. So I'm going to have 3 chapters in this book, and remember, I've just put these spreads together in Photoshop. The book's not designed yet. I haven't got that far. So that is a double-page spread. In fact, well, we'll come to that in a minute. And it's an image that was shot from the north of Jura, and that Scarpa there, the Gulf of Corryvreckan's just round the corner there. And these are the Gavelats here, the Isles of the Sea, and behind is the Isle of Mull. Wild country. There's nothing in the west coast of Jura. And I walked out to Ben Garrisdale there. I was camping not far away, and I also got the gilly, one of the gillies, to take me out in a boat down Loch Tarbet, and I walked back. But there's just nothing there. There's huge raised beaches, but it's really hard underfoot. The only thing you've got are the Argo Cat tracks, which you can walk on, and the raised beaches are real ankle breakers. So again, this is Islay. And there's some tremendous landscape in Islay. The left shot there is Greenyard Bay, and you're looking up the Scarborough there with Jura. This is from Islay, obviously. And this is filling this rock here, very old and hard rock that's weathered. And I shot that 2 years ago, and I was back down there this April. And when I was there 2 years ago, I mean, I've been to that location many times, and I hadn't really kind of registered as something that excited me too much. But I shot that image, which I was quite pleased with. But when I went back this year, I kind of realised why I hadn't really noticed it before. And the sand, actually, and this happens on a lot of beaches, the sand was up to the top of that circle there. So that sort of graphic nature of that rock wasn't that obvious, and wouldn't have actually elicited my interest to photograph it. And this is what you find. I mean, there's a lot of places I go back to annually, and every time you go back, something's changed. The environmental conditions, it might be when the birds arrive in April, you know, the migrants, when they're nesting, when they're mating. That changes. Sometimes the lichens in the rock. This year on Muck and Canna, there's that gold dust lichen, and it was really vibrant this year. But on other years, it's by comparison very much more muted, and I've no idea of what reason that is for. So you can see there, I've just drawn a line down there, and that's the gutter of the book, the middle part of the book. So you can see what I'm doing, and we'll just evolve that. I'll leave up here a wee bit. It's just my glasses. Thank you very much. So that's a 3x1, which was the format that I used with the film camera. But this was shot actually with a GFX, and it's a 3x1 format that I've cropped. And again, it's a Garvalax, and you've got Bertha the lighthouse there. Just a very, very still evening, as you can see the water there, which you know really is turbulent with the currents that go through it, is almost like glass. Just beautiful moment to experience. There's a golden eagle, and there's some quotes that I've made or used, and this one is by Mike Crockett from Golden Eagle years. I've done quite a lot of research into golden eagles, and he's written, "She came gliding towards me from the east, like some extraterrestrial being, dark, massive and silent as a ghost, with an aura of the primeval about her." Just kind of sums that up. It's rare to get pictures like this, because if you're shooting raptors, you usually find that you're in the reef, and there's 4 stalks above the bird than there is underneath with any bird. And that's the big problem. And you've got to pull the shadows up 4 stalks, and it never looks particularly authentic. That there is the nest of a ring plover. You can see hidden in plain sight the eggs, and the bird, it is a shelly beach, but she's brought in a lot of these chips round about that there. She's brought all that kelp in. I mean, what I'm trying to do is make order from chaos, but she's hard work to do the opposite. She knows how to create chaos around her eggs, because if a great blackback garlic plover, a herring gull, a hooded crow see these eggs, they're toast. And I found this poem, I'm not going to read it, on a ring plover found dead in Taree, and it was written in 1884 by the Duke of Argyll. It's really beautiful. So I like that contrast of, you know, new life and death. And we were out here on Thursday, Wednesday, we were out here when the cairns are called. It's one of the most remarkable locations. And I tried to get on there at low tide, when the tide's flooding, and you see these kelp, the kelp light, because the currents that go through, the kelp is just striking. I've used a polarizer there just to take some of the reflection of the water, but I kind of use a polarizer creatively, and when I mean creatively, most people, you know, turn a polarizer to maximum polarization, but you can see what you should be doing when you're turning a polarizer is you should be looking at the way the polarizer is affecting the colours of the image through the lens. Because often when you turn the polarizer too much, the water will go too dark, and it does add value. But of course you've got to be careful with a polarizer in the skies, because you'll find that the top left-hand corner of the image is almost a royal blue, and by the time you move over to this side of the image, the hue has changed. There's a lot more yellow on this side of the image. It's almost like turquoise. And if you've got a clear blue sky, it's betrayed immediately. If there's some cloud up in amongst it, it kind of breaks that transition up. And the other thing that you should be aware of, if you're not, if you've got a lead polarizing filter, there's a warm-up in it. So it introduces yellow into your raw files through the polarizer, and it's very difficult to eradicate. So just be aware that the lead warm-up filter, in my opinion, does not add value. And I don't know why there's a warm-up in it. So again, this is the cairns I call, and these are what I refer to as intimate landscapes. They're not close-up pictures, but it's trying to recognise the natural beauty and artistry that exists in the natural world that most people either trod over or don't even look at. You know, they're too busy looking for a horizon. And this is the you know, the general public. If you show them photographs without a horizon, they don't respond to them very easily. They don't know it's because there's no horizon there. And the other thing that you've got to take into consideration is that there's there's a big proportion of the general public that haven't spent a great deal of time outdoors, certainly not in places like these. So they're not quite sure of what they're looking at. So what I think helps here on these spreads is to have essentially a view on one side and a more intimate landscape on the other side. And because it gives it context. And that's, with intimate landscapes, that's one of the issues for people. There's no context there. And here is the concept. You know, you can smell the dampness in the moss in the forest, and you can feel the texture of that granite in front of you. It stimulates something else. Ultimately, my intention is to present the reader through the combination of those very different presentations of the same place, to see landscapes in new ways, both in print and in person. And I think, you know, for professional landscape photographers, I think we constantly need to be pushing the envelope out of it and trying to do something that's beyond the iconic views of Glencoe or the sky from Ilgo. We need to be doing something that takes this subject forward. That's the day alive. I'm sure some of you have been there on the island of Egg. It's got some of the best rock pools I know. And again, that picture there was taken, the one on the left was taken in 2015. And I've never seen the seaweed as thick as that on the sandstone rock there. It's Jurassic sandstone. Some years you'll go there and it's patchy, and again I don't know why it changes year on year, but that colour there is 100% natural. In fact, I don't think I've got any saturation or vibrancy in that at all. When you're shooting a picture, it kind of looks false, but it's real. And the beauty of these rock pools is that they're well out. That's actually spring tides there, so the tide's way out, but they're obviously flushed twice daily with fresh seawater, so there's a lot of marine life in them. These are concretions on the left-hand side, and they're spheres that are huge. It's taken about 50 million years for them to grow, and they've grown under the ground, but that pile was way under the ground. And what happens is that it's a bit like a pearl and an oyster. From a nucleus, sometimes a fossilised mollusk, and it starts as a nucleus and it attracts the calcite that's been squeezed out the sandstone, and it starts to grow in these spherical shapes which are actually harder than the host stone. So what you can see here is the sandstone's all eroded away, and you can see it's still sitting on a pedestal of sandstone there. But there's lots of these lying around the Bay of Lag, but on the beach, that have been washed out, and they're just sitting there statically, you know, having been eroded from the sandstone. And these are just simple sandstone pools. On Rock, where we were on Thursday, there's the northeast side of Rum, and also the south side is Torridonian sandstone. And it erodes into these amazing caves. I mean, you can see that cave goes right through a headland. And the other thing about the sandstone is that lichens love to grow in it because of its porous nature. So you can see you've got that magenta green thing you're there, and you've also got that lovely sort of orange blue thing going on as well. So you've got quite a lot of colour opposites going on. And that, I think, was shot last year in the left 25 I did. And it kind of, again, that was in another location just south of that. And it just kind of reminded me of ropes and a galleon and all that barnacle on it. And again, I didn't decide not to use a polarizer in that image. I mean, it's not a default. You know, many landscape photographers have got polarizers permanent in the lenses, but it's a tool for a job, and you certainly don't want to be using a polarizer all the time. But I wanted the actual highlight of that because I thought it added value, and help create contrast within that small area. Again, you can see that synergy between the two images, and it's a bit like Fragile in a way, where I've used the colour of the egg and the landscape to bring them together. You get that grass from the previous year that's wound its way through that lichen-covered rock. And this was a cave that we photographed this, well, I photographed that in 24 when I found it. And I took a group there, and I told them about these caves, and we're walking about, and I looked in, peered at the cave, and I could tell them one thing, what was he making all that noise about? So I set my camera up, and I took a picture, and I got them to come over and have a look at it, because your eye doesn't quite see the colours the way the camera sees it. And when I looked through my camera, I couldn't believe the colours. They weren't quite as vibrant as that. I mean, I photographed this cave many times, and the first time I found it, it was the best. And these colours are completely natural, and they're different kinds of lichens. And this rock face, which is Torridonian sandstone, it's been intruded. Oops, don't know what happened there. Oops, take me out. Fix that in a minute. It's been intruded by, I haven't forgotten. It's been intruded by a basalt pipe through there, because Rome was a big volcanic centre. But this is much younger, it's about 300 million years old, whereas the Torridonian sandstone is a billion years old. And there's a kind of cubist in there, there's a Picasso in there in that wall, can you see it? Cubism. Now, I've photographed that many times. It's on Sandy, which is an island adjacent to Cana, and that's wrong behind. And I went out there for a week just before Easter, and the weather was mad. It was cold, there was northerlies, and you can see there dark skies, and the light was coming through big swells. I think I've shot that there at a 15th of a second. A 5-stop ND on, just to give a little bit of motion there, but just really tremendous. And we were out here on Tuesday, and the puffin's nest on this stack here, and we were standing up there, and the puffins, I've never seen this happen, they fly around this stack all the time, and they come really close to you, just round and round you go, and then they drop down on the water for a bit, and then they're back round. It's a tremendous experience. These are whitetails, and that was a young whitetail underneath there. It's probably just been out the next 2 or 3 days, and it's far underneath and it just wants to play, just playing. And that's a big male. That's a male whitetail there. The female's always much bigger, as you know. I'd love to see that shot when I was out before Easter. These basalt columns, nobody there. Many million people go through there. The Irish, not famous cave, Chaz Cosmo. Many people. It's worn out on the feet. And that's a raven's nest there on the right-hand side. It's been in that basalt cleft for generations. Crucible a new life there. Incredible. You see 5 eggs. It's right down the cliff. It's 500 ml eggs. It's chocolate. And that place, we've gone along that. I mean, I'd started running these trips out there in 2007. The boat was along there. Every time you go along there, and it's, it looks hellish is the wrong word. I mean, it's a kitty colony, but it's wet, and it kind of, it looks the way you imagine some of these marine environments, when you see paintings of mermaids and that sort of thing. And I was looking at the map, the OS map, the Gaelic, and I translated it. And it's called the translation, Pit of the Gallows. And I thought, what a brilliant name for this place. So you can just imagine that you're just about to drop down and off you go, dunk. And that's what you're looking at. That's fantastic. What a fantastic game. Hit of the gallows. And I'll just read this quote because I really like it. These are shags. 6 black stumps of naked skerry draw the boat close in. The oarsman, feeling a new cold in his bones, sees cormorants glazed to their sea rock, carved out of life, their own tombstones. Just think I look like that, don't they? Norman McCabe, from his poem called Winter. And there's another quote here which I'll read you as well. That's on Sandy's well, down from the big stack, obviously not taken when I was here last time. I have lain down in the long grass while the raven honked and flicked above me and the skuas cruised in the blue sky. I have felt at times, and perhaps this is a kind of delirium, no gap between me and place. I have absorbed it and been absorbed by it, as if I have no existence apart from it. I have been shaped by those island times and find it difficult now to achieve any kind of distance from them. The place has entered me, it has coloured me like a stain. And that's Adam Nicholson from Searoom. But, I mean, he, as you know, owned the Shants, and he's now passed them on to his son. But that just sums up the way I feel about the small isles. You know, they're a huge part of my life, and I've had the privilege to explore them, both on foot and by boat, getting access into some of these places. You know, a real privilege. But that location there, I mean, you've got skuas cruising past all the time, and ravens. I mean, it could be, have been written there. So Skye, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, the left picture's looking over to the Kerrang, shot at dawn, and this is Watterstein Head here on the right hand side, and the up here is you see it right at the end is East Point, where the castle Ben Hur go with cameras. Down that coastline, I spent 2 days there and never met a single person. That's the sea stacks at Mangerstad on Lewis. And I photographed that many times, but that was, for me, the best picture I've taken. And because, I mean, people always think it'd be great to get a wild sea, and it is great to get a wild sea. And there's a bit of spewing there, but the trouble is, I've been there when there's been massive seas. But you get these huge swells that are coming right in from the Atlantic, and they're explosive. They hit the cliffs, and they create this spew. So you lose the colour. All you've got is white froth all the time. And what you want is these sort of, you know, Dutch painting, the Dutch master colours that you get to see. And I've got it there. The tide's quite low. You can see the rocks underneath there. I'll have a polarising filter on that just to take some of the sheen off the water. And you've got, again, that lovely pink-green thing going on. I mean, actually the weather had rained quite heavily and then it cleared out, so the rocks were wet, and you know, that really had the colour in them. Harris, you know, it's a photographer's dream, as you know. I find Harris a very difficult place to photograph. Because you know, the photographs you'll see at Harris are either Shirley-Boss or Luskintown. And in both of these places, there's not many natural compositions on that whole coastline of Harris. It runs out into nowhere. And the only place, I think that there is the best location in Harris, because, I mean, it creates depth. I know it's not a sandy beach, which is probably quite good news. But you've got Tansy there, and then you've got Kilgravore and Bishop, and you've got that whole that's three of there, that's circle, and then you've got a triangle. See that? So you've got two natural shapes there, and it's trying to read the graphics in the landscape. In the Olympics, it's a bit simplistic, but I'm trying to get something out of it staying. That's Torridonian sandstone on the right, the big piece, and Wissey and Nice. These are the building blocks of the North West Highlands. That there I've photographed many times, and sometimes you go into that beach and it's disappeared, it's under the sand, and then you go back a year later and it's back out. The old man store, just up from Storehead Lighthouse, and you've got these lichens there, Fabergé eggs. That was a lichen field that I found. When did that shoot? 2009. A lichen field there, and it was the best lichen field I'd ever found. I mean, it went from twice the length to this room, and completely undisturbed. And there were areas where they had these, myriad lichens, and you could take these still lives. And I went down the following year. I used to go back there every year myself. Went down the following year, and the place had been completely trashed. There must have been 3 guys there, and they took all these stones and they built dugouts. You know the things you get at the top of mountains, for people to sit and have their lunch in. And so the big 3 of them right up the beach. And they take quite a bit of effort to do it, but they completely trashed, what was probably a 200 or 300 year old lichen field in an afternoon, trashed it. And this is what happens when the public get access to places like that. They don't even know what they're doing, it's just ignorance. But even if they did, it's probably still done it anyway. And I find it so sad. And I'm afraid that North Coast 500 has trashed so much of that top end. Not just the honey spots, but the paths that have been created into places that were formerly, remote. And it's happened in Harris as well, in Bushnish, for instance. They put in campervan tie-ups there. I mean, it's a gold eagle stronghold between there and Lewis, one of the biggest concentration of gold eagles in there. And yet they've put that, and there's some sensible people in the North Parish Trust that were behind this. And they've put it down at the bottom. If you wanted to say to someone, I'll take you to the remotest place, in Scotland, that could have been it. And now there's a hook up there for camper vans. And sometimes there's a burger van there. And they've completely destroyed it. And by all means put a hook up for camper vans. It's somewhere not that far from the main road. And what happens is, these camper vans, it's a road, a single track road, there's many of them are. And in places, there's a drop of about 10 feet on each side. And the camper vans come off there and they shut down the whole road. And there's communities down there and they can't get a vehicle in to get the camper van up. I mean, it's total madness. So, the stacks, just under German roads, spectacular. Stacks of Duncansby. Lots of potential for photographs there throughout the year. Orkney, fantastic. If anyone's seen the Sigma Valley, the Sigma videos with Joe Cornish and myself, the film is actually photographing this, but conditions were absolutely spectacular. And that's Westbury. I photographed them last year. You can see the height of these cliffs. That's all gannets along there as well. There's hundreds and hundreds of birds there. The swell of the sea, as you can see, is if you go in there, fish food, 10 minutes you'd be fish food. Because you can't get out anyway, it's vertical, there's nowhere to get out. You just got to get pummeled. Not good. Then there's the Old Man. I went there 2 years ago in an effort to try and shoot that with light on it at the right time of year. And this year, I think it's a 5-stop filter on it where water's running by. But Rackwick's got these fantastic old red sandstone boulders with these concentric rings on them. They're really spectacular. I'm not going to read that today, but it's George McCown Brown. You can see these concentric rings there in the boulders there. I won't read you this stuff, that's another movie. And I'm sure some of you have read The Living Mountain. And when one has realised, as probably one does not at first, that it is a power which binds the strength of the wind to its own purpose, so that the more powerful the wind, the more powerful is the flight of the bird, then one sees how intimately the eagle, like the moss campion, is integral to the mountain. Now, there's a lot of things you could write about a golden eagle, and that wouldn't be the first thing that comes to mind, but it just shows you her understanding of the importance of that eagle and how it fits in to that mountain ecosystem. You know, she takes something like the moss campion, which is one of the probably lowest forms of life on the mountain, and you know, she likens it to it because they've all got a place to play. And she had, I mean, if you haven't read it, it's not a particularly big book. There's a big introduction by Robert McFarlane, and what I would recommend you do, and it's very well written, but what I would recommend you do is read the book first and then read what he says about it, because you know it's nearly as long as the book is, but it's full of insight that people rarely have. It takes years and years to write stuff like that because she knows what it's about. So the second chapter is called The Wildwood, and we have plenty of them around in Scotland. We're very fortuitous to have the best Atlantic rainforests in Scotland, on the west coast, in Arnamack and in Morven. And there's other places, and I'm constantly looking at new ones. So again, you've got this juxtaposition of a general view within a forest and a bit more detail there. You can see the bryophytes here that grow in the tree, the mosses, and these are all polypody ferns. And these are all growing on the tree. They're not parasitic in the way that ivy is, but just growing there on the tree. And the tree is actually a platform for this ecosystem. And this oak in the left-hand side is about 400 years old, I've been told by one of the Nature Scott people. Just fantastic environments. And this is this, you know, synesthesia that I mentioned. You know, you can almost smell the dampness in the wood there. It's a Morven, you know, maybe oaks, the colours and that. I mean, I go down there at least twice a year, and I've never seen a canopy like that. I think that was in 2017 or 2019, I can't remember. But, you know, increasingly when you get down there, you know, what we get in October, late October, is we get these, you know, the back of these hurricanes that happen in the US and they come across the Atlantic, and they'll rip everything off the trees before we get time to change properly. And that's a leaf jam in the river, and the water's obviously subsided. It's amazing the detail that exists at the feet. This is Morven as well. And there, you know, I mean, I remember that day when I shot that image there, and you know, this is moss that's been blown off the tree, and it's just as everything has here in the autumn. You know, it's been raining, and probably still is raining, but you know, in that day, and that's all I came out with. I was quite happy with that, you know, because you've walked through a huge oak forest, and you've managed to recognise a composition that works out of the chaos of the oak wood. You know, you thought that's going to work, and it's a perfect partner for that image on the left, which I shot some years before. beautiful and reciprocal in the background there. I mean, you seldom get moments like that. It just happens sometimes. Telephotos work really well on landscapes on the right subject matter. That shot was 70 to 200 at probably 135 mils, something like that. And you've just got such a beautiful cross-section of trees in there, hardwoods. You've got the birches, you've got beeches, you've got sycamores, you've got a lot. And again, it's just trying to get a year where you get a good autumn and where the wind hasn't ripped out the trees prematurely. This is Strafara. I spent a lot of time in Strafara. Quite beautiful. They were taken 2 years ago, I think, in late September, and I was back the same week last year, and the trees were still green. There wasn't really much in the way of change. Last year when we did summer, I thought the colours would change very rapidly. And here, this oak tree, you can see that it's cleaved off that rock from that cliff face, and there's a big part of the tree down behind there. And I shot that in 24 last year. I went back, and it was storm florist on its back, all the stone upward, a huge oak in its back, hundreds of years old, gone, just like that. And there were some other big oaks and another estate that went down, really big old oaks that went down to that forest. Forest in area last year pulled so much woodland down, unbelievable. I couldn't believe it, how much it went down. And again, that's an early morning shot into the farm, and the trees are quite graceful, but they don't look like that now. So, you'll get a period in time where you've got that picture and you think, well, just maybe get another picture that's similar to that the following year, and you'll find that, there might be a branch hanging off because the wind's knocked it off during a storm, or the trees have grown in a way that are like shapely. So, everything changes. And I quite like this. I shot that last year, and you've got that line there, and then you've got the line there, the midline with these other oaks on it, and then you've got the hill there. So you've kind of got 3 lines coming from that one source. And you'd prefer if that tree in the background wasn't there, but I couldn't do much about that. And then 2 weeks later, I shot this image with the pine cones. And with these intimate landscapes, they still need to have a structure to them. You've kind of got to have somewhere to go. Do you see how there's a circle in that your eyes follow? You probably didn't realise. But if we're doing our job right, everybody should navigate these pictures the same way. That's what you'll find, you read the magazines. I don't guess any published anymore, they talk about leading lines all the time. And a lot of photographers have done up onto my tours that they go out looking for leading lines. But it's not about looking for leading lines. It's about trying to absorb everything that's happening and walk it out and take it in. I mean, sometimes you go places and people say, what are we doing here, Colin? I've just dropped up into one of the best locations, you can find, and they're asking me, what are we doing here? And what can you say? Well, I thought we might take photographs, but they don't want me to take the camera and set it up. But it's about going out there and keep your camera in your bag. Go out and explore. Go out and explore and see what stimulates your mind. What stimulates my mind might not stimulate your mind. So go out there and look and feel and discover something. And when you see something that elicits a response in you, then you get your camera out and you use the camera and the lens as a scoping tool, and then you decide what focal length you're going to use. Do I want to be here or want to be here? there. You know, you want to be here. You've worked out in your mind the exact composition. Then you put it in tripod. And you say, why do you use a tripod then? Well, you get it in a tripod because then you can perfect the composition. You can look at it and you can tweak it up a bit, round a bit, down a bit, up a bit. Then you can find a picture and you can check it, which is something that most photographers don't do. They don't check. If you've got an EVF, you've got a wide out to check. So, my opinion is that you've got that EVF, use the EVF. The screen at the back is a waste of time. You can't see a thing in the screen. And if you're using that electronic viewfinder, it's a conduit, and a well-illuminated conduit right into your brain. And you can see immediately the relationship between all the objects in the frame. You can't do that on the screen, because you can't see the screen. So what do people use screens for? And you'll see all these experts on YouTube, ambassadors, shooting with a screen. I mean, I can't see a thing. They're just pointing the camera in a general direction, hoping it's right. And the other thing is, if you hand hold, particularly with a telephoto lens, and you think, I would use a tripod, that's fine. If, whatever floats your boat. You take that picture and you have it hold the camera there all the time, and you might be waiting for a wave to come in, and you'll find that you might shoot 20 pictures, and some will be like that, some will be like that, some will be you've missed the end of the cliffs. You think they're all the same, and inevitably the picture with the waves are the best, the composition's of us. Whereas if you've got that on a tripod, it's not moving. You can set that up, you've got your composition, you've got a remote, and you just sit and watch. You've checked the exposure, you've checked the highlights, the shadows, you've looked at RGB histogram, your focus is the right point, you can shoot and you can check. And you can shoot, and the camera's not moving. So you've got perfect composition. So more and more people turn up and say, got really stabilisation. And the pictures are all over the place. And the thing is, I can't really help them. I can't go wrong and have a look through the camera and tweak it slightly and say, well, do you think that's better or not? And they can compare the picture I've made and the picture they've made and decide that when they go home. So there's a big reason to use a tripod, and it's not about camera stability. It's for the reasons I've just outlined. Discourse. Just to far. And another great quote by Robert Mulcair. As the power of our devices led to our distrust of, as the power of our devices led to distrust our unaided eyes, or have we become dismissive of what takes no technology, but only time and patience to perceive? Attentiveness alone can rival the most powerful magnifying lens. And that's so true. I'm not sure about that pairing. I need somebody else for that one. They're not going to last together. I might get in. And again, another similar image of you get these mushrooms here, and you can see that's a bit of beach dirt that's been dropped by a red squirrel up top. Lots going on in there, the mosses, different mosses, and the print is printed well. They're beautiful to see in a page. That was 2 years ago, and 2 years ago we had what's called a mass year in Scotland. And the trees, I don't know how they all know, that they overproduced the berries. The rimmon berries 2 years ago were unbelievable, and it's to try and overcome the forces of predation. You get all these red wings and field fares that come in, plus the thrushes and blackbirds and all the other birds that eat these berries. And if they overproduce the berries, then there's a bigger chance of them not being devoured completely, and some will germinate. So I've shot that at half a second. I mean, it was a storm blowing. I thought, I'm not going to try and fight this. But interestingly, I was back there last year, and the rowan trees wither very, very quickly. They will have like any berries on them. And it's because to do that last year, it takes a huge amount of energy out of the tree. So the following year, they usually have very little in the way of fruit. And you can see these lovely pine cones and the lichen on the left-hand side. They look quite nice. A shot of 500 none on the right and a 70 to 200 on the left. That's Ben Stanov up here, Trolleykin, and Bucolitter. You can see how I've composed that so that I've got a clear line between these stones and that reflection there. What you don't want is a pinch point, a back cutting through there. You want that gap in there. And that picture will never happen again, not just the conditions, but the seas will get, when they get stormy, they're going to push these boulders in different places. The boulders will move all the time. So that's the Atlantic rainforest. Landscape beauty is more than a collection of disparate features, but a result of them coming together as a unified, harmonious whole. It is the way that features combine which make a place special. The whole should be more than a sum of its parts. And that's by Robin Lloyd-Jones, who wrote the biography, The Sunlit Summit of the Life of W.H. Money, who was a prolific writer and climber. And he wasn't talking about landscape photography there, but that's our job, to combine the features of a place. The whole should be more than a sum of the parts. That's our job. And that's spring on the left-hand side of Lochhuron, 2012 Atlas. And you've got that amazing kelp on the high water line on Lochhuron as well, both in Knoydart. And these beautiful lichens, undisturbed places, Lochhuron. And finally, into the mountain. And I'm still waiting, I've been waiting 4 years. I've got about 4 pictures that I've got in my mind. And I cannot get the conditions on the west coast of Scotland where there's stable snow. And there's a lot of snow last year in the northeast, but in the northwest and in Skye, it was very, very little, because I was watching it all the time. I'm sure many of you have photographed there in Loch Marie. It's quite prolific. And you've got Slay up there, which again is Torridori and Sandstone up here. This is all Rissy and Nice, this band that runs out here. Great opportunities for photographs there. And that was last year, beautiful reflection on the left. A really simple treatment of these big rocks on the right hand side. That was one of the last summit camps I did on the top of Ben Alligan, and you're looking over to that Steelka down there, and Red Stackmore Invasion is there, and then Chalk in the background. And this is down in the on here. The Hill of the Bird. Simple pictures. The pastoral breeze is running through the landscape quite beautifully. And at the normal, now there's a big tie-up for this cable that's coming across from Lewis. When I was down there earlier in the year, there were about 8 machines just where that forest used to be. So nothing's forever. One of the remotest parts of Scotland. Here's the fellow boats up in that area as well. And Charlotte, the king of mountains at dawn. These were taken many years ago during what was our coldest winter, 2010, 2011, the main event. Don't get conditions like that now in Scotland, unfortunately. It's a bramble runner
near a waterfall. You can see it's cased in ice. That's the Belt of Venus, or the anti-twilight arch behind Anchala. And if I'm about 500 metres there, but if I'd been on the top, the Earth's shadow would have been visible, which is a mauve band that runs 180 degrees across the horizon. And these colours, if they do happen, which is rare, happen about 20 minutes before the sun rises. And that was taken in 2010. And I'll never see that in the Ascent again. I mean, you've got stacked poly there, and at the back you've got Cognac, and then you've got Stolvin, then Canis in there, then you've got Coolmore, Coolbeg, and over at the back you've got Morassen and Cornwall. So, just incredible conditions. That was the last day of the big freeze. Really, really strong winds. And when I stood there, I was up a good time and I brewed up some tea, and I was standing there with a cup of tea and I looked up above me, and about the height of that ceiling was a golden eagle, not moving, just like that. I was looking at it and I was looking at it. Just that eye contact, the top of a mountain with a golden eagle. And it didn't move, it didn't appear to move, I mean, it just shot right across that, like an arrow, disappeared somewhere. Wonderful moment that you never forget. These are the pancakes that you've got at the top of Coolmore, weather into these torrent rains, actually, the weather into these amazing formations. And Stolvin, both at sunset. And that's Coolbeg, that's amazing. Coolbeg, that's Skewer and Fiddler over there, and then Charlotte over there. And that's Cornwall and Ben Morassen. Cornwall and Ben Morassen up here. And the light at evening is still within it. That's Canis and Cornwall over on the left. Unheralded moments of revelation cannot be obtained at will. Its gift cannot be actively stopped. And you can't ever go out knowing that you're going to shoot that big picture. It always happens when you least expect it. But then, again, I talked about insight in Nan Shepherd's Living Mountain. That's another example of it. So I've got another couple of years to run in this. I don't want it to end because I don't know what to do after this. And maybe I won't have enough time for another book. You never know. But I need 2 or 3 years on it. I certainly need more mountain pictures, and I want snow that I don't have. I run photographic tours and workshops over the year. There's about 12 of them. That was off Cara, looking over to the Sky Coolan on Mary Doon. That was Nortney this year. That's my group down on that outcrop on Westray, shot on Collins Road. That's the Cairns of Call over there, as I mentioned on Wednesday, and that's the boat I use now. That's where we stay on the Muck and Small Isles tour. It's a purposely built shooting lodge. They run a commercial shoot there during the winter, and the accommodations and food is a very, very high standard. So we spend a week there. Oh, we occasionally do that. Just occasionally. So I'm going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. We went through quite a lot there, and I hope you've picked up 1 or 2 tips and ideas about how you might develop your own photography. It's a conduit for personal expression, and that passion can never really be replaced by AI. It's a personal vision of the natural world, and I think I hope that it will continue to remain relevant. So I'll round off there, and I think Jim's good to see someone here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll just have to shout. I can do that. Okay, well, thank you very much. What a wonderful day of speakers and entertainment we've had. Looking back, looking back on the history of our club, you know, speaking about our membership, about how we all work together, which has given us longevity of our club, and I think that's what all clubs have to do these days. It's tough to keep clubs going, and I think it's wonderful that we've managed to reach the 100 years. So thank you for raising that. Let's do that, and thank you for coming along. Thank you. Moving on to Douglas. Douglas, you supplied us with excellent information on old photography equipment, on your photographs, your family history. You know, we've all learned stuff about the old equipment. We've all thoroughly enjoyed your stories, and it was very, very kind of you to come along, and I think you can put your hands together tonight. Colin, you've wowed us with your photos, your poems, your stories, the technical stuff. I was mostly moved by, you know, your compassion, your into preservation of the landscape. I think it's so much that we should be so aware of these days. And you know, the conservation of everything. I think we're all very, as photographers, we're all very much aware of that, and that came through in your talk, as well as all your beautiful images. So thank you for coming along and sharing that today. So, just another couple of words, I'll not keep you. Thanks go to our guests for coming along today and sharing our special occasion. It was really good of you to come along, and I think you have enjoyed your day. Special thanks go to members of our club who took part in getting together all the photographs and contributing to the exhibitions both here, upstairs and to the library. Thanks also go to the committee members who helped put all this together, so thank you committee. Special thanks go to Mike Dunn and David Bolton who put up the library images for the exhibition there. And David for all the extra work that you've done. Where are you? There you are. Thank you, David. Thanks go to Marjorie McIntosh for all the catering and the ladies who helped out with the catering there today. Thank you to Pete Boswell and for all the mounting and help Pete did with that, Pete. And Ken and Marjorie also for helping with the gallery, and my husband Alan, whatever he is, for helping put all the gallery stuff up last night. Looking forward, technology is changing, photography is changing, and I think what we have to do is look at conservation and how we can continue to highlight that. We need to adapt like our forebearers, how they had to adapt to the change in equipment and availability, and how they took photographs, and I think we all have to adapt as equipment changes and moving forward. There's also exciting possibilities. You talked about, you know, how equipment has changed in the filming and things. There is exciting possibilities and changes ahead, and I think we have to embrace them to be able to move forward and go with that. So I would like you to put your hands together. Thank you for everyone who's taken part, who has attended. I hope you've enjoyed the day, and here's to another 100 years of photography and clubs.
I am a club member, and just before you head off, I would like to say a few words. This day is a big one for our club, 100 years. It's taken about a year and a half, believe it or not, to put this together. So we hope you've enjoyed it and it's been reasonably smooth for you today. All of the work has been driven by this woman here, our President Gillian, who has grasped this occasion really well and has ensured that everything is in place, everything is done well, and I hope you see the fruits of that today. What I'd like to do on behalf of the association, all your members, is to thank you for all the work you've done, which is really appreciated. We don't think anyone else in the club would have been able to do it, so that's quite an achievement. I have here a small token. Actually, it's a really small token. And it's from everyone in the club for a job really well done.
Oh, thank you. One last thing, we do have food left over, so if you'd like the doggy bag to take home, please come and help yourself. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Safe trip home.